1 week season.
OWS fam, the nation, my dudes and dudettes, we are back for another Searching for Ceiling presented by 1 week season and Sharp Football Analysis. As you can probably tell, I am super sick, so I'm going to keep my talking to a minimum and just bring him right in. The great Mr. Rich Hribar. How we doing, brother?
We're doing good, man. Happy holidays to everybody. We're about to go into the final leg of the DFS season, which has always been my favorite, like post Thanksgiving, for a number of reasons. But this is where it's always been the best historically for me. So I'm hoping to keep it going.
Yeah, dude, for sure. We actually have some like solid trends to be going off of. And we're starting to get into the point of the year where we get bigger slates. Like we're through most of the buys. We will have some onesie twosie buys left over for next week, but we're through by apocalypse. We're through London. I think we're through Europe.
Yeah,
games.
it's no more international games.
Yeah, so we're through international games and we're starting to get to some bigger slates. So more fun to be had. When we're looking at this week 13, and again, apologies, guys. I will try my damnedest to not cough into the microphone, but we do our best here. When we're looking at this week 13 main slate, it's also a little bit of a departure from what we've come to know. In that we actually have some quarterbacks that are capable of putting the slate out of reach. We actually have some teams that are capable of scoring some points. So let's talk about some of those places. The first place we need to talk about that has two of those things is Philly and Baltimore. How are you seeing this game?
Yeah, this is this game is super exciting from a real football stance, from a DFS stance. It's a little tougher from a DFS stance because everyone's so expensive. You look at if you want to build like just a correlated stack of Jalen Hurts plus AJ Brown plus Derrick Henry, you're at like 45% of the cap on both sites. It does get tricky with the core pieces in this game. You do have some kind of pay down guys that you can kind of get excited about. Maybe if you're into the Zay Flowers, if Darius Slay doesn't play. But by and large, if you want to stack around this game, it's going to be expensive. What I'm really excited to see is the angle of the Philadelphia Eagles rushing game versus this Baltimore Ravens rush defense. And it's two-pronged for that reason. One is we're going to finally see what we have with the Ravens run defense. Ravens run defense has been absolutely awesome this year on every metric that you look at. But they also have not faced anyone even in the stratosphere in terms of running the football like the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you look just up and down the Ravens schedule, the run offenses that they face, just not good at all. Like the best run teams that they've played are probably the Commanders and Buccaneers. Like those are the best run games that they've faced all year. So we're going to obviously get that tested with, Mr. Saquon Barkley having the most electric season of his career. But then also if the Ravens defense can hold up, so that's one angle. So if you are into like the Saquon angle that he can get over here, you have that. And then if the Ravens do push the Eagles to have to throw because their run defense is stopping Saquon Barkley, we're going to finally get a drop back game for the Philadelphia Eagles, which, dude, we haven't had. I mean, since their week 5 bye, they have a 41.8% drop back rate. That's dead last in the NFL. Their highest drop back rate in a game over that span is 48.6%. Opponents against Baltimore have a drop back rate of 68%. Part of that is game script. Again, parts of the defense, the run defense, how it's been. And then the lowest drop back rate of teams even had against the Ravens this season is 55.4%. Even if we had a 55% drop back rate, that would be the highest rate for the Eagles since they come back. And, if we're going to get more dropbacks, that means we get more of a spot for AJ Brown, whose peripheral metrics are amongst the best we've seen for a wide receiver. It's just that he's been dinged up and the Eagles aren't throwing. AJ Brown's played 7 football games in full this season. He has over a 30% target share in all 7 of them. Like, it doesn't matter if Devontae Smith's played, it doesn't matter if Dallas Goedert's played. Like, he's got over 30% of the team targets, and he would have this matchup against a spot that we picked on for wide receiver ones. So, yeah, I mean, I want to just keep rambling about this game, but it's super exciting from that approach.
Yeah, and also Devontae Smith returned to a limited session on Thursday. This is his first session above a DNP since week 11. So does he return here? Something to watch. But when we're talking about like, do we have the salary to kind of dive headfirst into a game stack of this game? We're going to need to find some spots for some value. I think running back is one of those spots. I mean, Chase Brown has, let me get the exact numbers. I just wrote it up, but I want to get the exact numbers. 32, 24, and 29 running back opportunities in the 3 games without Zach Moss this season. And 23 of those opportunities over the last 3 games have been targets. So we're talking about like floor and ceiling play. Like he's way underpriced at 6,200. We've got Bucky Irving, who outsnapped Rachaad White for the first time all season last week. It was very close. It was effectively a 50-50 split. But is there a potential for him to become even more involved against a Panthers defense that ranks dead last in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs? And then potentially even going to the other side of that game in Carolina pass catchers. We had David Moore, I think, right? Yeah,
David Moore.
Who saw, what was it?
10
targets last weekend. For the Panthers. Adam Thielen's in a second game back from injury, so potential to have some value there at 4,800. But when I'm looking at the slate, like I think it's possible to be able to pay up to kind of overstack this game environment. If I'm doing so, I personally would like to do it through AJ Brown and
Jalen
Hurts, as you mentioned before. Yeah, sorry, dude. Stick with me. But I think that some fun things can be done from this game, and based on current projections, I think this is a kind of a product of not being able to do this hardly at all this season, which is like pay up for a quarterback and pay up for his expensive pass catchers. We just haven't had the salary like at all this season. So I don't think that we're going to see that really done this week as well. Speaking to Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, even Lamar Jackson, some of his, it's really only Zay Flowers for his expensive pass catchers. But I'm highly intrigued in this spot. What are you seeing from the other side? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about Zay Flowers, but are there any of these secondary guys on Baltimore that you think have merit here?
Not really exciting for me, just because they spread the ball around with the other guys. I mean, obviously they get the multiple tight ends being kind of banged up. Charlie Clark is going to be out probably the rest of the season, so that does open up maybe some more snaps for Mark Andrews. But again, like Mark Andrews has literally been like, did he catch a touchdown? That's been the question, right? He hasn't played. Outside of the one game Isaiah likely missed, he's just not really playing the amount of snaps that we want to play. He's been fine on a per target basis. So it's really just Zay Flowers for me. If you're gonna attack him, we might not have Darius Slay in this game. We'll see if he ends up getting on the field. But this Eagles pass defense has been good. We did see him challenged on Sunday night, and they gave up some production to both the Rams wide receivers. Kupp got his late, but Puka was pretty active the entire game. So I don't think Flowers is just going to get erased in this game either.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect of this game is that Charlie Kolar is going to be out. And we know that the Baltimore Ravens are playing from jumbo sets, so 21 and 12 personnel at the highest rate in the league. So I do think that there's upside here with Mark Andrews. He had an 87% snap rate in that one game that Isaiah Likely missed. Now with Charlie Kolar out, I believe, because Isaiah Likely does not do the pass blocking stuff anywhere near the level of Kolar or Mark Andrews. I believe we see Mark Andrews jump back up to that 80+% snap rate range. So there could be something there as well. All right, man. I'll throw it to you since I'm just over here coughing. I'll throw it to you for the next game you want to talk about.
No, I mean, that's obviously like the starting point that you get to. Let's see. How about we do my favorite ugly game? Well, I guess it's not even ugly looking at the point total, but the game that I think offers like a multiple avenues to play it is Rams Saints. We're getting 2 offenses that can be efficient per play against 2 defenses that are awful, that are just absolutely just terrible. The Rams they have spots where they're good in games because they have a good pass rush, a good young pass rush, and that kind of has like gotten them by in a few spots. But this team, when they don't get pressure, I mean, they've just get absolutely shredded like in the pass game. And nobody wants to hear this about Derek Carr. And you're not going to play Derek Carr in DFS because you always have to deal with the Taysom stuff. But he has had 20 fantasy points and 19 fantasy points in his last 2 outings. But he's 7th in completion rate. He's 6th in yards per pass attempt. He's 7th in touchdown rate in the NFL this year. Like he's, especially when you throw into the context what they've had, the injuries they've had in the offensive line and at wide receiver, like it's been a positive season for him. And I know nobody wants to hear that because you're never going to win a Super Bowl with him. But from a DFS stance, he can get there. What I'm saying. This offense has been operating at more efficiency than probably they get credit for over the course of the season. I think they're going to be able to move the football in this game. They're probably not the side you're the most excited about because you can do Stafford stacks with Puka. You can do Stafford stacks with him and Cup, which is pricey, but you can do it based on the things that we've already laid out. We'll talk about some cheap guys over the course of the show, but you can also play it inversely. It's a great spot for Kyren Williams too. So like this game has, when you're doing like onslaught approaching, like you can do it from just so many levels. The Rams have get absolutely flooded with vertical passing. So is MVS dead, right? Like is he we saw him go up to an 87% route rate against the Browns before the bye. We had this game with Taysom Hill, who had one of the most unique box scores probably in NFL history in week 11. So this game for me has a lot of fun ways to play it.
Yeah, dude. I've been talking all season that I really want to see like a run one, throw one, receive one, like catch one game from Taysom, dude. If there's anybody that can do it, it's him.
And he had a 40-yard kickoff return in that game.
Yeah, and the week prior too, he had like a 75-yard rushing score called back for him hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's clearly involved in that offense. I like stacking that game up. Do you have a favorite one-off from that spot?
I would say I lean probably Nakua, but man, I think large field, like I feel like Kyron's going to be overlooked because we just know because we know for the touchdown equity always exists for him and that he's just not conceding touches. But I have tried to go against the grain with Kyron a couple times and he hasn't gotten there because he does need the touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of like it's weird because Kyron probably got a little bit overvalued from the stance of because the touchdowns and how much they were impacting his fantasy scores. He's very much more from a fantasy stance, though, closer to like Josh Jacobs and James Conner than people realize.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. He has a more robust red zone role, and that's really the one thing that separates him from those guys. It looks like Alvin Kamara is going to garner a good deal of ownership once again. People just continue to want to play this dude. How are you feeling about that?
I think you and I have been kind of on the same boat with Kamara at his price because from the ceiling required, because when he plays with Taysom, he loses the touchdown equity. He hasn't scored, I believe, in 6 straight games. The matchup is kind of weird because before Sunday night, the Rams had been pretty decent against running backs, and they've been good against receiving backs too. But then obviously Saquon just totally warped out all of their top-down metrics.
Yeah. Well,
and how tilting is it 2 weeks in a row that Saquon had that game on prime time games?
Not on the main slate.
Because I had a couple weeks had chased the Saquon spot.
Mm-hmm.
Like because he was getting he's sub 5% every week on the main slate.
Yeah.
And he was on the main slate on FanDuel last week, but
hey, he might be sub 5% this week, so play safe.
He's going to be every week.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
I do like that game though. Indoors, nothing to worry about because this is like our first like faux weather slate too of the season.
Yeah, we're starting to get into. I mean, look at last night, and this will tell you how sick I was. I'm a Packers fan. I couldn't make it through the Packers game last night. I fell asleep. I had to wake up and see who won. But holy smokes, it was frigid over there in Lambeau last night.
You were supposed to have a couple spots. Bengals is supposed to be real cold. Bills is supposed to be cold. Potential snow. Roth doesn't think it's gonna be as bad as others do, but that's on the FanDuel main slate. It's not on DraftKings.
Yeah. They're supposed to get nor'easter lake effect snow going on up there. We're likely to get one Trevor Lawrence back from injury, which makes this game against the Texans a lot more appealing, right? How are you seeing this game from both sides?
Yeah, I like this game from a stacking stance as well because of just the status of where the Jaguars are in terms of offense, like we just figure it's got to be a really condensed target tree, right? And that was kind of the bugaboo at the Jaguars earlier in the season, the other large cat team. Does that you had Christian Kirk, you had Evan Ingram. How does Brian Thomas Jr. fit in? They signed Gabe Davis this contract. Well, now we've just taken two of those guys out of the picture for the rest of the season. So we're probably counting on, Brian Thomas Jr. and Evan Ingram to just soak up targets in a game where they're probably going to have to throw the football. We'll see if, Bobby Slow puts us in a position to where the Texans don't get ahead. But we've targeted this Jaguars defense. Like they're approaching to be a historical bad defense in the context of like a full season. And we've targeted them all season long. They give up a ton of, passing points per game. Is the last time CJ Stroud was a QB1 scorer was against the Jaguars. He's done that in all 3 games against them for his career. I think this is a spot where if they want to get some, confidence, they did throw a little bit more last week on early downs. So do we see them kind of get Stroud going in this game? I like the angle of, bringing like Stroud, Nico Collins, your favorite Jaguar pass catcher, whether it be BTJ or Evan Ingram. It feels like a really easy game to stack because of the taking away the targets on the Jaguar side.
Yeah, and we know how Evan Ingram has been when Christian Kirk is off the field. That's exactly what we have. We know that Brian Thomas Jr. has been this downfield threat, and now he's no longer having to compete with Gabe Davis. So yeah, there's a lot that sets up well for both of these spots. We know that Nico Collins has absolutely destroyed man coverage, but we don't necessarily know how the Jags are going to approach this game. They have been the most fluid defense as far as personnel alignments and groupings go. So,
and to be honest, it probably doesn't matter what they try to do.
Right.
Because they actually tried in the first time these teams played, they only played man coverage on 5.9% of passing plays, and it still didn't matter.
Nico he's just him, man.
He had 12 for 150.
Yeah. Nico is that dude.
I actually see, I'm curious to see your projected stuff too, or where we get into next week, but or where we get into Sunday morning, because I'm showing that like Nico's not even going to be like that popular because of his price, because I think people are going to obviously get to the Arthur Juan stuff, but man, Nico's in a nut spot.
Yeah, I was trying to pull it up now. Looking like 12 to 15%. Is what I have him at. Yeah, that's too low. Yeah, but this game, obviously we've seen the Jaguars just completely negate the run and go pass heavy when the situation requires. So I think that you can stack this up. I think you have to do it a very specific way if you're going to stack it up. In that we kind of have to nail the Houston piece that gets them up, which to me would likely just be Nico Collins. So that brings in, if Nico is hitting early, that brings in the ability to get some Trevor Lawrence doubles, even if you would like. It gives you the ability to play Brian Thomas or Evan Ingram. But for me, a nice, clean, tidy mini correlations of Nico and Brian Thomas Jr. probably gives you the biggest upside and bang for your buck there.
Yeah, I agree. Ingram's been getting a ton of targets, the past month. It's just they've been more like tertiary volume stacking type targets. Like he's only averaging 8 yards per catch.
Yeah. So. And this team just continues to struggle in the red zone. And we know that Trevor Lawrence has like a really, really bad, like sub 3.5% touchdown rate for his career. So that's typically the area where the tight end is going to be most reliant is touchdowns from the red zone. So Brian Thomas Jr. effectively just hoping for a long touchdown. And
this is the team. We talked about Calvin Ridley last week, and he didn't get there. It was Westbrook-Ikhine again that caught the long touchdown, of course.
Yeah, man.
But the Texans, they have good metrics on a play-by-play basis against the pass, but when they give it up, they really give it up. They've allowed now 14 touchdowns from outside the red zone this season, the most in the NFL.
Yeah, so that screams Brian Thomas to me. All right, moving along here. We talked about some of the cold weather games, or just alluded to them. We talked about some of these afternoon games. Let's talk about Tennessee and Washington. And I think this might be more eye-opening than it's just purely talking about upside here. But I think we need to talk about this game. Um, and the reason is, I think that both of these sides might see a little bit more ownership than they should in this spot, because the Commanders should be able to control this game via the way that they want to, which is marching the field, controlling the time of possession battle. That simply like saps too much of the upside out of this game environment. And we continue to just see ownership gather on the Commanders. And I just continue to not want to play them. Are you
Mhm.
seeing anything different?
Nope, because I feel very similar to the Commanders, like you and I have against the Cardinals, and we've talked about the Cardinals offense ad nauseum, and it happened again last week. But when the Commanders, in the ilk of the same fashion that we always talk about the Cardinals, when they can't play complementary offense, their passing game sucks. I'll just be honest with you, like that, just be point blank. Like if they can't play complementary football, when they have to just drop back and throw, when the opponent knows they have to drop back and throw, it's not good. And does that exist in the outcome range of outcomes this game? I think it could. I mean, they are 5.5-point home favorites, but Brian Robinson Jr. is coming in banged up. He's probably not going to be 100%. We know Austin Eckler is not going to play. And Austin Eckler has been their second player in terms of generating explosives. I mean, he's averaging more yards per touch than Jahmyr Gibbs this season. He's not going to be on the field. When they refuse to move Terry McLaurin around the formation. Like literally, they played him 6 snaps at right wide receiver. Guess what? He had an 80-yard touchdown when you did that. Congratulations, Cliff. Do it more. Will he? Probably not. So, and this Titans defense has been awesome against the run. Like they've been absolutely awesome against the run. So I do worry just from a top-down stance, like this Commanders offense is even going to be effective enough to make this game even get there. And then on the other side, you always have to worry about just the way Will Levis is getting there. How sustainable is it? I mean, Will Levis is getting there for fantasy, but he has 5 touchdown passes the past 3 games, 38 yards, 70 yards, 98 yards, 41 yards. Like those are just not going to keep happening.
Yeah.
They could, but like that's just not sustainable. This game scares the life out of me. I feel like it's a pretty blatant under, but
Yeah, I'm with you. We did it, y'all. Matt Eberflus was fired.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, just breaking news. Heard it here first.
Just an egregious way to close that game out yesterday.
Dude, and it was like 6 games in a row that were last minute. What the hell? How did you lose that
Yep.
game? Oh man. Anyway.
Tough scenes if you've been a Bears fan now. But I'm with
Yeah.
you. I kind of there's nothing in that game that particularly makes me like excited that like there's nothing I'm excited to roster in that game.
Yeah, I'm the same. There is a game in that early chunk of the slate that I think carries more upside than is likely to be reflected in ownership, and that's the Colts and the Patriots. How are you seeing that game?
Yeah, I actually do really like this game from multiple angles, individual piece side. One, the Anthony Richardson side here, I think is pretty interesting again, and we've been in a couple spots for him. But in particular, being able to keep him one from a clean pocket. The Patriots are 29th in pressure rate. Even last week in Detroit, from a clean pocket, Anthony Richardson was 10 of 16 for 163 yards, over 10 yards per pass attempt. They're getting their left tackle back in this game too. And the other angle from this too is obviously you have the play action pass. Anthony Richardson second in the NFL in rate of play action passes. The New England Patriots are the worst defense against play action pass. And that makes sense because they play aggressive defense. They play a lot of man coverage. And they've got one good cornerback. So you give us some big plays, when you play aggressively and only have like one premier defender, but they are dead last in quarterback rating against the pass. They're 30th in completion rate, 25th in yards per pass attempt, 31st in touchdown rate allowed against the play action pass. Also, this could be a game where like they potentially can get Jonathan Taylor some touches in this game and get him going. But one of the pieces I believe that is cheap and on the board in this particular game is Adonai Mitchell. We've seen him. He's got a crazy 63% target rate with Anthony Richardson on the field against man coverage. Now, we don't know if those targets are all going to be catchable or not. I would assuredly believe they might, or half of them won't be. But we have a $3,900 player that has really just great splits and really great upside per target. So I think he's got to be on the menu.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason he is because Josh Downs looks like he's not
Yeah. Oh,
going
yeah.
to play.
Sorry to bury the lead.
Yeah, so with Josh Downs off the field, obviously Adonai Mitchell should see his snap rate jump. If we look at his snaps early in the season, Josh Downs obviously missed those first 2 games. Adonai Mitchell had snap rates of 64% and 59%. Those were the second and third highest of the season. He played 94% snap rate without Michael Pittman. And to me, that is clearly indicating that like Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman are the perimeter wide receivers, and Adonai Mitchell is going to fill in for whoever's out. Like when Michael Pittman was out, he saw 94% snap rate because Josh Downs is that like clear slot guy.
Yep.
Now that Josh Downs is expected to be out, Adonai Mitchell should step into like 65, 70% of the offensive snaps, depending on their personnel usage. And yeah, like you mentioned, the per target upside against man coverage of Adonai is extreme. And that makes sense because he is one of the best pure separators in the league against man coverage. So love that call there.
Don't watch, if you have an Mitchell, don't watch the per targets. You just let the box score come to you.
Yeah, don't watch the game. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, he finished with like 5 for 90 and 1. That's real solid.
I still remember all the way back in week 1 when he was, I think, min priced, and he had just that he was naked on the second drive of the game, and he I mean, Richardson might have missed him by 12 yards.
Yeah. We need the downfield stuff to hit.
I think the bummer for this slate when it comes to Richardson, though, is like you said, I think the quarterback competition on this is a really good quarterback slate for DFS. So I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to work him into, or if I can work him into my player pool, because I'm a very tight quarterback player pool gamer. So there are a lot of signals for him, though.
For Richardson?
Yeah.
100%. You're effective with a bet on Richardson. You're effectively saying, like, I need 24 to 26 points, and none of the quarterbacks put the slate, like, none of the quarterbacks score 35 plus. But Richardson is not weird, but like Richardson has an additional out to that kind of profile in that he's a cheap quarterback, but he also has like, and not a lot of the quarterbacks priced below 6K have this, but he also has like 30 plus fantasy point upside.
Yes.
So Richardson kind of always is going to be in my player pool. And I think that the constricting a little bit of the expected target tree, like you can run Richardson with Adonai Mitchell, you can run him with Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. I think either of those are viable. The flip side, the other side of this game with the Patriots, do you see them keeping pace? How do you see them doing that?
Yeah, this is a tough spot, I think, on paper for the Patriots offense. Well, one, we started to see just like some of the lack of offensive environment start to pull down this offense a little bit. Like Drake May's been awesome, but we have seen in recent weeks just like the lack of playmakers this team has, like preventing them from kind of getting there. And they're really just so bad on early downs. And this offensive line is so bad that, and where it hasn't hurt, like the transition to Drake May, because people are like, we can't play May because the offensive line's bad. But May's actually helped the offensive line on passing downs because of his escapability and his ability to extend plays versus what Jacoby Brissett was able to do. But this team can't run the football. Like this is where the offensive line and the shortcomings of the offensive line showed up. Like they are just a horrendous rushing team. Like and it's put Drake May in really bad spots to have to win on these third and longs consistently, have to win on third down consistently with just receivers that don't win on third downs consistently. When Kayshon Boutte is like, playing one of your 100% of dropbacks, like he's just not winning. You've got Demario Douglas who can win, but how excited are you? And then from a individual matchup stance, we know what Gus Bradley's going to do. Gus Bradley's going to play a lot of cover 3, and Drake May has been awful in a small sample against cover 3. 31st in completion rate, 32nd in yards per pass attempt, 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions. We know he can run around. You're not particularly scared of the matchup, like from a top-down stance, seeing the Colts, but like it's really not a lot of signal here for a lot of these pieces.
Yeah, I'm with you. Typically, I am very excited to play Drake May because his pass catchers are so cheap, and
Mhm.
you can stack them up for very cheap. This is not one of those games for me. Um, and I should like caveat that statement with typically Drake May is very interesting to me on a slate where we don't have quarterbacks or mini quarterbacks that can put the slate out of reach, because he's one of those guys where he has enough rushing upside, to where 24 to 26 fantasy points, in some of these other slates in this season, um, could have been fine, and kept you on pace for a 200-point score, where the number of quarterbacks that could keep you on that pace just was lacking. This week, like we've kind of hit on, kind of the theme of the show early, is like we have quarterbacks that can put the slate out of reach, and if one of them does, you're going to need that score. That's why, like, we were like, yeah, I guess Anthony Richardson, but Drake May in the same vein, probably not for me.
Yeah, and I think the wild card element of this game is if the Patriots aren't doing anything on offense and the Colts are playing a neutral game script, obviously I think that makes Anthony Richardson better. But I mean, is this a spot now for Jonathan Taylor, like who's been relatively quiet, like very
Yeah,
quiet, but he's also the touch equity is amazing. I mean, even he had another 100% of the backfield touches last week, but he's not catching any passes.
yeah.
So like he's always priced up. I'm Jonathan Taylor's the one guy I can't get like, do I want to be aggressive with or is it just a trap again?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor has one game all season where you would have been happy with his score for GPP stance. And like you said, he's not catching many passes. So it was the one game he went over 100 yards and scored multiple touchdowns against the Bears in week 3.
Mhm.
So that's effectively what you need from Jonathan Taylor. Like he still has that within his range of outcomes, like a 102 game on the ground. Um, I don't know if I'll be betting on that this week. There's just like Chase Brown, man. Like just comparing them directly. It's hard for me to click Jonathan Taylor at a more expensive salary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about the Steelers and the Bengals. I know it's supposed to be cold, but we have a Bengals team that just continues to throw the football around the yard. We have a Steelers team that, can get pressure with the best of them. So this game kind of sets up like it has an extremely wide range of outcomes. And when that's the case, I typically want to have interest when the ownership is not flowing there. And I want to kind of stay away when the ownership is. How are you seeing this game, knowing that T. Higgins is probably going to be one amongst the. Um, oh, actually, he's not. Sorry. He's projecting as the top point per dollar play on the slate, but he's not garnering much ownership, actually. Um, how are you seeing this file? I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in on, Bengal stacks when you can get them. So if they're not going to be owned, I mean, this is especially because T. Higgins and T. Higgins' involvement. Well, one, I think just and from an objective stance, Chase Brown's an amazing play. Like you've hit at an amazing time. He's just underpriced for his workload. I mean, he's literally had 100% of the backfield touches in 3 straight games.
Yeah.
Every single backfield touch. And I know they tried to give Khalil Herbert one, but they actually didn't count for it as a touch for him because he never had possession. But we haven't seen him. We haven't seen him. But Joe Burrow with T. Higgins on the field this season is averaging 8.4 yards per pass attempt. With T. Higgins off the field, 240 dropback sample size with T. Higgins off the field, it goes down to 6.4 yards per pass attempt. It's a 2.1 yard. That's good math. Difference. That's significant. That's the difference between third in the NFL in yards per pass attempt and 30th. Like
Yeah.
that's massive. And then the other element too, and I've chased this a couple times. I haven't quite gotten there because they've been kind of more ragged wide receivers, but the Steelers have been really good against wide receiver ones this season. I don't think that matters so much versus Jamar Chase, but they have pushed more target volume to wide receiver twos this year because of that. And does that open up the door for T. Higgins to be have another T. Higgins game? I mean, in the past 5 games T. Higgins has played, he has 33%, 36%, 30%, 33%, and 28% of the team's targets. What
Mhm.
has been different for T. Higgins versus the last couple years when T. Higgins is on the field? Because this team's an 11 personnel team. It's the scheme.
Yeah.
But they've never been able to replace the Tyler Boyd targets with the rest of the roster. And this happened with George Kittle earlier in the season with the 49ers and the moving pieces they had. They never replaced the McCaffrey targets. Well, the Bengals have never replaced the Tyler Boyd targets, because if you go back the past couple of years, it was always T. Higgins. When he played with Jamar Chase, it actually hurt T. Higgins. But because they never replaced those Tyler Boyd targets, because Yoshavash can't get open, Jermaine Burton gets in his own way from earning more playing time. It's given T. Higgins this larger runway to be. It's a very more condensed target tree now. It's Higgins, it's Chase, and you're getting the Chase Brown stuff being kind of the de facto third target now in the passing game. So Higgins has been able to kind of just consistently earn targets because of that. So I do like Higgins a lot in the spot.
Yeah, I think I do too. He's projecting very well. He's projected not to have a ton of ownership. The Who is it? Joey Porter Jr. Is legitimately a top 3, maybe higher cornerback in the NFL, and he has been known to shadow. So do we see him shadow Jamar Chase here? I think it's at least within the realm of possibility. So yeah, I think you could play Chase Brown and T. Higgins and not even have to go to Joe Burrow here. I think that is completely fine and viable. You can stack it up with Joe Burrow. If I am playing Joe Burrow, though, I probably want to have Jamar Chase there as well. I mean, look at Joe Burrow's put up 30 fantasy points or more on DK for 3 consecutive games. That's pretty solid. Like,
seems pretty good.
That's pretty good, right? And now, like, he gets the big red 1 next to his name for the matchup against Pittsburgh, and he's probably not going to be owned here. So I think if you're playing Jamar Chase, I think it has to have Joe Burrow on that roster as well. And I think you can go anywhere from Joe Burrow plus Jamar Chase all the way up to Joe Burrow plus T. Higgins plus Jamar Chase plus Chase Brown. I think you can go that far here and just say, like, this game environment takes off because the Bengals are effectively, like, they know they just have to pass their way to the playoffs, and that's okay.
Yeah, we have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, you keep doing that. Also, I really want the Bengals to succeed here because I have a Bengals overstack with Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow in a roster that's in the top 100 on drafters right now. So that would
there you go.
Yeah, that would be great. I might see if I can double dip there this week.
Perfect, man. I love it.
All right. All right, man. I'll throw it back to you. We covered a lot of these game environments this week, but are there any other that you want to talk about real quick?
We might as well talk about Bucks Panthers, because obviously there's a lot of ways to kind of go about playing through the Buccaneers in this spot where we still kind of always want to play guys against the Panthers.
Yeah,
Baker's been awesome this year, arguably having the best year of his career. We've seen, the Panthers regularly just kind of allow quarterbacks to get there. I mean, Baker, they had the rushing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, but he was awesome last Sunday, 24 of 30. He got in for his own rushing touchdown, just missed the bonus. But he's been a top 10 scorer in 8 of 11 games this year. And Carolina dead last in the NFL in pressure rate when they haven't gotten pressure. They're 28th in completion rate, 25th in yards per pass attempt, 30th in touchdown rate allowed. When Baker has not been pressured, he has completed 74% of his passes, 7.8 yards per pass attempt, 7.3% touchdown rate. I know that it's a good spot for Bucky Irving. I will be back in on Bucky Irving to a degree as well from an efficiency stance against the Carolina Panthers. But I think people are going to get lost in the box score with Mike Evans last week. Mike Evans was going to play a lot more than the box score dictated that he did. In the first quarter of that game, he was on the field for 75% of the dropbacks. In the first half, it was 71%, and then it was just 50% in the second half because it was 24-0 and I believe 30-0 at a point of that game. And they were just able to kind of say, all right, we got this one. We're going to ease it up on you. If he's going to be on the field and the Carolina Panthers are going to be more competitive, because we've seen 3 games in a row. They won 2, and they took the Chiefs to the 11th hour last week. If the Panthers are going to push the Bucks or at least hang around, Mike Evans, if he's going to be on the field for 75% plus of the team dropbacks, I want a part of that because we had the usage we wanted. He was targeted on 29% of his routes, 3.3 yards per out run, and those are front-end wide receiver 1 rates against the Panthers team that has allowed the highest touchdown rate to opposing wide receiver ones in the league and outside wide receivers. So I'm going right back to Mike Evans. He got a price drop actually this week.
Yeah, he did. I was on Mike Evans last week. I played him everywhere, and it didn't materialize.
I mean, the game environment just never it's set up to where it was just a disaster. And we've seen the Giants. Everyone watched the Giants at Thanksgiving. They are terrible.
Yeah.
And the weird thing too about it, if you're counting on the Panthers to kind of hang around here, right, or at least keep it so where we said we get that drop back rate where we want it. I mean, you do have the layers of the Canales, right? Like Canales coming over versus Todd Bolt, like, coming over from there. Does he have like an ace up his sleeve? Does he have some tricks to combat what Todd Bowles wants to do?
Probably not, but
probably not. But they've been adequate. And they were, that was the best game we've seen from Bryce Young since the Packers game last year.
Yeah.
By far last week against Spags. Spags was dialing up some shit at him. And dude, he was making some anticipatory throws against the blitz. I mean, his per against the blitz numbers last week were one of the best in his game of his career. And he was 10 of 13 against the blitz against Spags. And when these teams played last year, Todd Bowles blitzed Bryce Young on 61% and 57% of his dropbacks, the two highest rates that Bryce Young's been blitzed in a game over his career. So
interesting.
We know what's gonna happen. Does Canales have something? And can Bryce Young replicate that? Because we haven't seen him string together good games against the blitz very often.
So is that a signal for Adam Thielen, you think? His second game back from injury.
Yeah, if you get the routes, I also think there's an added signal for Adam Thielen if you get the routes, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers season-long metrics against the pass don't look good. But one thing that happened last week is they got both Jameel Dean and Zion McCollum back. And with those two guys on the field this season, they have only allowed an 87% quarterback rating to pass. There's 6.6 yards per pass attempt and 2.3% touchdown rate on 222 pass attempts. They have 186% pass attempts faced with one of those guys off the field, and it goes up to 8.4 yards per pass and 8.1% touchdown rate. So those guys play outside. They don't really move. So that could be more of a signal for just the slot receiver here. You just kind of have to follow. I haven't really been following the Coker practice stuff, but.
Oh yeah. And Jatavian Sanders is probably done
out. I assume he's out. Yeah. Bummer of an injury, because he had started to play pretty well.
Yeah. He had a neck injury.
It was scary play. Yeah.
Yeah. Jalen Coker is an interesting shout.
I didn't know if I haven't followed practice stuff. The holiday has thrown me off I'm just counting on Friday practices to get me through.
He was at DNP Thursday. We're still waiting on Friday.
Because if he's out, then that is obviously more signal for Thielen to get the slot snaps.
Yeah. 100%.
And then he's not going to be running routes against those other guys. So you maybe have a cheap kind of bring back here. People will definitely be jamming in Bucky Irving, though. What are you doing with Cade Otton in this spot? Because what happened to Cade Otton was our worst fear. Evans comes back. He doesn't get targeted.
Yeah, I won't be going there myself, because with Cade Otton, you really need volume, right? Like that's been the only time he's been viable is when he's seen elite volume. And we had that for 3 straight weeks when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were out, 10 targets, 11 targets, and then 8 targets in week 10. So 4 straight weeks. And then he comes back, Mike Evans comes back and he sees 3 targets. So that's more signal than noise to me. So I won't be going there myself.
I love Mike Evans though, again, and I know he's here, but I do love because Bucky's going to get popular for sure, especially on DraftKings.
Yeah, where he's so underpriced. Dude, we covered a lot of games. And apologies again, y'all. I haven't been talking as much as I usually do. That might be good, but God, I just feel like crap. So we're gonna go into the out the doors, dude. Give me something that is somewhat vomit inducing that we haven't covered yet.
We did cover most of my stuff, like I said, that I was looking at to maybe potentially be under Rams Saints stuff. We talked about Adonai Mitchell. We talked about Mike Evans. We talked about you brought up the Jaguars pass catchers, which I'm 100% on board with too. I guess the only other kind of two games maybe we kind of just gloss over is maybe Falcons Chargers, which has gotten some steam. Obviously, that's an indoor game. We're getting potentially another piece that will push the Chargers to throw more removed. The loss of J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is really cheap, but Gus Edwards is not going to, if he don't score a bunch of touchdowns, man.
Yeah.
He ran fewer pass routes than Hassan Haskins in that game when he entered the game in the second half. And then they'll probably have Kimani Vidal up again. So if you don't get touchdowns from Gus Edwards, he's just not a guy I'm excited to play. But I am excited to see if and Herbert's going to be owned, but if we get a high pass volume game from the Chargers here, and then because I think if you want to correlate it, you can do something with Bijan Robinson coming back in that game. That one stands out. I don't know what your read is on that. And I don't know if you have a take on Cardinals Vikings.
Yeah, Vikings defense is my take.
I mean, we have been the number one, I think, podcast that just doesn't believe in the Cardinals passing game.
Yeah, I know. I've been fighting that battle all season, but here we are. I'll continue to just play the Vikings defense, who, in my opinion, is best defense in the league this season. The field just doesn't want to play them. I don't understand it. So I'll just keep playing them.
It's just the thing. So anytime you have the Cardinals in an environment where it looks like they're going to have a tough time running the football, like this one does, then you have to be worried about the offense as a whole. Because when they're not able to play complementary football, the passing game and the shortcomings of the design of this passing game really is highlighted.
Yeah, and the Vikings defense has scored double-digit fantasy points in 8 of 11 games this season, and nobody wants to play them. I don't understand it. So I'll just keep playing them.
Well, that's kind of it. That's it. We covered basically all the stuff.
Yeah, we did. All
right,
efficient.
y'all. Efficient.
Yeah, we had to be this week. We're efficient this week. Hopefully I'll be feeling better for next week, and you guys can hear my voice a little more. As always, Rich, thank you. And OWS fam, Sharp Football Analysis Nation, we will see you at the top of the leaderboards. If you're not into what we're doing, head on over to 1 Week Season, get signed up for Inner Circle. Head on over to sharpfootballanalysis.com. Use code TAKE25. That'll get you 25% off everything on their site, which includes all of Rich's great stuff over there. Until next week, y'all. We'll see you.
1 Week Season.